Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. We have more gaming and PlayStation news, rumours and leaks to go over. So there's a lot to get excited about when it comes to the future of superhero games on PlayStation. Insomniac Games, the studio behind the hit Spider-Man series, is already deep into its next wave of Marvel titles. Let's start with the big one, and that is Wolverine. The game was first teased back in 2021, and while Sony hasn't locked down a specific release date, the current word on the street is that it's aiming for a 2026 release date. And that might sound far away, but considering the scale of the project, it makes perfect sense. Unlike Spider-Man, which leans into action, bright cityscapes, and a wide audience, Wolverine is expected to go in a darker, violent, and more mature direction. This isn't surprising though, as Logan as a character has always carried a grittier tone. He's not a quippy hero swinging around New York City. He's a loner, scarred by violence, constantly torn between his humanity and his animal instincts. So it looks like Insomniac wants to capture that edge. Alongside Wolverine, Insomniac is also moving forward with a standalone Venom project. This time the spotlight isn't on Peter Parker or Miles Morales. Instead, the story is set to follow Eddie Brock, the original host of the alien symbiote. Reports also suggest that Anti-Venom will also appear, which could open the door for some absolutely wild storylines. Plus, Carnage seems to be lined up as a major villain. If you know the comics, you already understand how chaotic and terrifying Carnage can be. That alone could make the Venom game something completely different from what we've seen so far. But here's the bigger picture. Wolverine in 2026, Venom soon after, possibly 2027, and a third Spider-Man game expected in 2028 or 2029, depending on how development proceeds. That is the Insomniac roadmap for the next few years. This isn't just a random lineup of releases. It looks like Insomniac might be building something larger, maybe even a connected Marvel universe within PlayStation's exclusive titles. Think about it. Spider-Man 2 already set up Venom. Now Venom is getting its own story. Wolverine is coming in with a darker tone. Could all of these characters cross paths one day? Could Insomniac be laying down the groundwork for its own version of an Avengers-style crossover further down the line? It's too early to say for sure, but one thing is clear, Insomniac has become PlayStation's powerhouse when it comes to superhero games. Now let's picture this. Venom, the story follows Eddie Brock, as mentioned earlier. We dive into the world of symbiotes and we see Anti-Venom, maybe even Carnage. But what if Peter Parker and Miles Morales still make appearances in the Venom game? Not as the main characters, but as key parts of the narrative to set up a blockbuster Spider-Man 3 game. That way, Venom's game wouldn't just be a side project. It would expand the universe, deepen the lore, and naturally lead us to the Spider-Man 3 game. And that's where all the threads come together. Think about it, right? Insomniac has already planted the seed. Spider-Man 2 introduced the symbiote storyline. Venom is the next logical step. And then by the time Spider-Man 3 rolls around, we've already had a full game exploring Venom's side story, and the stakes would be even bigger, the connections were much more stronger, and the payoff will be absolutely massive. But could Insomniac be setting up something even larger? And like I mentioned, could we be looking at their own version of a Marvel gaming universe where Wolverine, Venom, Miles Morales, Spider-Man all exist in the same connected world? And what if we got a Superman game further down the line? Oh my god. Of course, none of this is confirmed, but it would make sense, right? PlayStation doesn't just want to make great single-player games, they want to keep players invested in the ecosystem for years, and the best way to do that is build a world where these stories overlap, where one game teases the next, where fans always have something to look forward to. And if Insomniac really is building towards Spider-Man 3 through a Venom game, would you rather see Venom as a playable hero in his own story first, or would you rather skip that Venom story and go right ahead and see him as a central piece in the conflict in Spider-Man 3? Fascinating stuff. Let me know your thoughts, guys, and let's move on. When people talk about Sony and its approach to gaming, one thing always comes up: its commitment to single-player experiences and whether they're going to release games on other platforms. That seems to be the online discourse, right? And while the industry keeps shifting towards live service games and online multiplayer, Sony repeatedly has made it clear time and time again that single player storytelling still sits at the heart of what it does best. Think about it for a moment. Some of the biggest games of the past few years have come straight from Sony's first party studios. We've had all the God of War games, The Last of Us games, Uncharted games, Horizon, all the Marvel Spider-Man games, even Death Stranding 2, and just last year we got Astrobot, which stole the spotlight, winning Game of the Year, and it's not slowing down anytime soon. We've got Ghosts of Yotes launching in 2 or 3 weeks time. Beyond that, the pipeline is stacked with Wolverine, Venom, Intergalactic, Saros, and multiple other projects that we haven't even heard from. In Sony's latest corporate report, they doubled down on this idea. They said their goal is to keep advancing their position as creative leaders in single-player experiences, and that's a big statement because it shows they're not just making games, they're aiming to set the standard for how solo campaigns should be done. Now, to be fair, Sony did also talk about expanding into live service games, and that's no secret. The company wants to reach a broader audience and diversify its portfolio. But the important takeaway here is that single player is still front and center. It's not been replaced. If anything, it's been reinforced as a pillar of what makes PlayStation different. And honestly, it makes sense. Look at the track record. Time and time again, Sony's biggest critical and commercial hits have all been story-driven adventures. Gamers absolutely love them, and you cannot get them experiences anywhere else. No one else delivers these single-player experiences like PlayStation. They just don't hit at the same level as Sony first-party single-player games. They're the kind of games that stick with you long after the credits roll. These games that Sony make, they're not typically about quick matches or seasonal content. They're about worlds, characters, and moments that make players actually remember. I would say perhaps Rockstar with the Red Dead Redemption series of games are the only other studio that comes anywhere close to the kind of single-player experiences that you guys know what I'm talking about. But here's the question. In a gaming landscape that's leaning more and more towards online experiences, is single player enough to keep people hooked? Or does Sony know something the rest of the industry doesn't? Maybe the answer is simple. Maybe it's players will always want both. Sometimes you want to jump into an online game with your mates. Other times you just want to sit back, put on your headphones and lose yourself in a story. What's clear is that Sony is not abandoning the formula that's worked so well for so many decades. If anything, they're doubling down. And with the lineup they have in the next few years, fans of story-driven games are in for something absolutely special. If Sony keeps delivering these kinds of single-player hits while also experimenting with live service on the side, could they end up with having the best of both worlds? I believe so. Single-player games are not going away, and Sony is going to embrace this more than ever before moving forward. Of course, live service, cloud gaming, releasing games onto mobile and PC, and PlayStation Plus subscription services, they're all part of the supporting act, the supporting segments which all support the PlayStation brand. But it's the single player games that is the center of everything. Guys, let me know your thoughts on this and let's move on. So Techland has confirmed that Dying Light the Beast will launch 1 day earlier than planned, moving to release the game from September the 19th to September the 18th. Now, a 1 day change might not sound like a big deal, but the reason behind it is interesting. The team decided to reward fans after pre-orders crossed 1 million. That shows just how much hype this project has built up already. And what makes this even more fascinating is how the game actually started. The Beast was originally conceived as DLC for Dying Light 2 Stay Human, but over time it grew into something much bigger, a standalone title with approximately a 20-hour main story and another 20 to 30 hours of additional content. That's a huge jump from a simple add-on. Good news for fans of the game is that Kyle Crane is back. For longtime fans of the franchise, that alone is a big reason to get excited. Techland has promised an exclusive reward for players who jump in during launch week, though details are still under wraps. Early previews point to immersive gameplay with heavy focus on survival horror, although some players have raised eyebrows at the $60 price tag given its DLC origins, but honestly, if the final product delivers, the price may not be the main concern. So guys, are you looking forward to Dying Light the Beast? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and let's move on to someone who just can't keep out of the headlines for the wrong reasons. Randy Pitchford, what have you been saying now? It seems like he's a glutton for punishment. So Borderlands 4 has hit the market, and while the humor, chaotic shooting and wild worlds are all there, performance issues are stealing the spotlight. On Steam, reviews have already slipped to mixed, and the PC community especially has been vocal about the crashes, the stuttering and the inconsistent performance, even on hardware hardware that's only a couple of years old. And that's where Gearbox CEO Randy Pitchford comes in. Instead of being humble and appreciative of the comments and reassuring gamers that they're on it and they're going to fix it, Randy Pitchford has his own take on things. And on X, he's doing the talking to address this criticism directly. And let's just say his responses have stirred up more headlines than the game itself. To one user, he even replied with a comment dripping with sarcasm. He goes on to say, "Code your own engine and show us how it's done, please. It's not exactly the kind of message you want circulating when your game is under fire." Pitchford then also goes on to claim that less than 0.01% of players are actually facing legitimate issues, while at the same time suggesting players tweak settings like volumetric fog to improve performance. The thing is that some of these recommendations actually contradict Borderlands 4's official guidelines, which only adds fuel to the fire. And it raises a bigger point. Are developers leaning too heavily on players to tweak and optimize games, rather than making sure performances are solid across all platforms at launch? PC gaming is always tricky because of the wide range of hardware out there, but Unreal Engine 5 has already gained a reputation for being tough to optimize. Some say the blame lies with the developers who build games for high-end machines first and then worry about mid to low range setups later. At the end of the day, most players probably don't care about the social media debates. They just want smooth gameplay and a good gaming experience. But when a CEO clashes with customers online, it can damage the perception of the game, even if patches eventually fix the issue. Guys, do you believe Borderlands 4's problems are being blown out of proportion? Or do you blame developers to take more responsibility when performance issues are widespread? What certainly doesn't help is when the studio boss is out there being cheeky and sarcastic to people who have paid for the game. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts, and let's move on, because we've got some information about Battlefield 6, specifically how it's going to run on PlayStation consoles. For a lot of players, performance is everything. Some people want the best visuals possible, others just want the smoothest frame rates, and Battlefield 6 is giving players a choice. On the base PlayStation 5, the game has two modes. Fidelity mode will target 1440p at 60 frames per second. That's going to give you sharper visuals, richer details, and a more cinematic experience. On the other hand, performance mode lowers the resolution to 1280p but bumps the frame rates up to 90 frames per second. Now that's a smoother, faster feel, even if it comes at the cost of some of the finer detail in the graphics. Now, the PS5 Pro is where things really open up. Fidelity mode on the Pro runs at a native 4K resolution locked at 60 frames per second. That means crisp, sharp images and the kind of thing that really makes the environments in Battlefield really pop. But if you want pure speed, performance mode drops the resolution to 1620p and goes all the way to 120 frames per second. For competitive players or anyone who loves fast-paced action, that can be a game changer. The real takeaway here is that ripple effect, and Battlefield are putting effort into optimization. They're not just cranking up the visuals and hoping for the best, they're giving options. So whether you care about sharp detail or lightning fast responsiveness, you get to decide how you want to play. And let's be honest, how many times have we seen games launch with just one setting that doesn't please everyone? Battlefield 6 seems to be learning from the past by giving people options. So, when you sit down to play Battlefield 6, what's going to matter to you? Do you typically prefer the eye candy of 4K visuals, or do you go all in for the frame rates to gain the edge in multiplayer battles? Whatever it is, it looks like Battlefield 6 is trying to strike a balance, and that balance could be what makes the difference in how players experience the game when it drops later this year. Guys, let me know your thoughts on the articles discussed in the video today. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.